and in the same time I study in Finland, and I was born in Russia. So basically I have homes in 3 different countries. And well, I do coding. I do Angular for almost 1 year, and I generally do websites and programming for like 5 years, so in high school. And our topic for today is E2E tests, end-to-end tests. At the same time, I will also speak a little bit about general testing in AngularJS. But before I start, I just want to say a couple of words about Golovin. And I was born in Russia.
Sorry.
So basically I have homes in 3 different countries.
Sorry.
So there we go.
Hi, Jacco here, Golovin, and I'm going to tell you where we're going to win this contest. About 70% of travelers is what we call a choice traveler. These are people that before they travel, think about how they're going to travel. They're not going to step into the car brainlessly, but are going to think, what suits me best today? How am I going to travel today? And the cool thing is, there are new services around the world in major cities that are providing these new things for these people. For example, Uber around the world, in San Francisco, for example, Car2Go in Amsterdam, but also in Germany. And these cool new services help you with getting from A to B. But there's one problem. Getting from A to B, you have to choose from all these services and all these different routes. What we provide is a multimodal trip planner for car, for bike, for walking, and for public transport, but also with combinations of those. For example, the car to a public transport station, and from there on with the tram, for example. On Golovin.com, we offer you an overview of choice between all these different travel alternatives. And because there are so many, we're trying to learn what suits you best. So it's a personal trip planner. And this personal trip planner centers around a personal profile, of course. This profile we call the mobility graph. And the mobility graph is an open platform. So as a mobility service, as a city, but also as a user, you can use this profile to fill this with information about your mobility, but also to use this information about your mobility to get a better suited mobility solution. So let's go to Golovin.com and see how it works.
Oh yeah, and currently we are the only one real-time trip planner in the Netherlands. So what that means is that if the train gets delayed by a minute or 2, you will know about it, and you will know about it as well. And we also involved with Google in changes of real-time data feed for transit information specification. Yes, that was a hard phrase, but I made it. And another good thing about Golovin website, about Golovin frontend, is that it's built with AngularJS, and that's why we need quite a good, quite a complex testing solution to make sure that it works fine and it will not fail. And today I'm gonna chat about different topics, such as a little bit, I would say a very little bit of theory of testing, setup, how to set up Protractor, which is a test runner for end-to-end tests, some examples of testing I'm gonna do. Then I'm gonna say a couple of words about backend-OS tests, about browser stack, which is basically a remote test runner, so we can test in different browsers in the same time, not having them on your machine. And I'm gonna tell you about continuous testing on trains, if you know what is it. But if not, I'm gonna explain it a bit later. But before I start, I just want to know how many of you use tests every day. Right. Wow, I would say quite a good percentage. Well, then I have another question for you. Why do you write tests? Does anyone know?
Confidence in the code.
Yeah, what else?
Yeah, confidence. You're confident in the code that you're writing.
Yeah.
But it also proves that your code is right, that it works as it's supposed to work. And you can also refactor with much more confidence, like was said before. You sleep better at night.
Yeah, that's also correct. Anyone else has an opinion? Why?
Maybe currently your code changes still allow the application to run as designed before.
Yes, exactly. But, well, mainly as the guy here said, only I would say exactly that phrase, that is testing is all about basically confidence that your code does what it is supposed to do. Because otherwise, if you fix one bug, you can get 10 other bugs and so on. And about AngularJS, well, we have two main types of testing. Unit tests, which is basically a small amount of tests around, I would say, one function or one feature. Well, not feature, only functions. And it's quite mocked up, so we only test that only one small function. And we have end-to-end tests. End-to-end test is basically how a user would behave on your front end, on your application. I'm going to give you a small example of running end-to-end test, just to make it, I would say, interactive. So here we have a browser, and what it does, it tries some different actions on our front end, and it checks that it all works fine. So for example, in that case, it checks if some elements are present on front page, it tries to log in, it tries to send a feedback form, tries that everything is opening, fine, tries to make some rows, and so on. So usually tests can take up to 10-15 minutes. It depends on the amount of tests you take, and it's not fast. But on the other side, it basically shows how the user can work with it, and you can see if something is broken right away, like that. I'm gonna stop it for now, but I'm gonna be back for it. And again, so why would you use it? Well, because you get the view how the users can use your application. You can check if the backend works fine with the front end. Well, if you don't use mock backend, you can check if the code is can be released fine. But it cannot replace unit tests, because unit tests is a bit deeper way, and it's and unit tests basically test not only as a view, but how the application works from the inside. What could be hard in it? Well, you need to set up a specific environment, and it's not easy to set up it. The tests are hard to write and even harder to debug. And, well, it's not easy to keep them up to date. Well, that's the principle of working of E2E tests. How does it work? So we have three main components. We have protractor runner here. Protractor is a thing which basically takes your code which you wrote, and it sends it to the Selenium driver, which is a bridge between the actual browser and the protractor. And Selenium says the browser what to do. For example, what element to click, what information to type inside. Setup. Well, the setup, it may sound quite easy, only 5 steps here, but it's not that easy. So first you need to get some packages in NPM, like protractor, Grunt, Selenium, from driver. Well, because as I told you, it's not one-step solution to do it. All the list of packages can be found in the protractor repo. So I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it. Then you need to run Selenium. You can. That's a simple way to run it. You can just type WebDriver Manager. For example, it runs for me now, but I can shut it down and basically just start it again. You can see how it starts. Or you can do a hard way. If you don't like simple solutions, you can just type all the stuff in the shell, and you can make a Grunt task out of it later. And you can run the task with the Grunt server. That's how we do. Then you need to set up a protractor config. Again, in the config, you actually have only like 3 main points about it. You need to type Selenium address. It's usually written by default, and if you start it with a WebDriver, well, it's already there, so you don't need to care about it. Then you need to type where is the location of your tests, where are they located. and you need to choose which browser you want to run. You can later on, you can even choose different browsers. You can run, for example, in Chrome or Firefox at the same time if you pass an array there. All the information can be found here in the repository. They have quite a huge amount of documentation. Later, you also would need a grunt task if you want to run it with grunt. It's quite simple. You just need to pass a config file and some additional arguments if you need them. You can also set up into a single run. That's when the tests run only once, or after run. In that case, you can set up a watch task, and grunt will be checking if you change something in tests. It will also run them once again. Protractor uses Jasmine documentation as a syntax for code, and API can be found in the documentation. API is quite similar to WebDriver.js if you have worked with it previously. I'm going to give a couple of examples of tests. So here we have our application. And what I can do, for example, I can open a front page and I can check that the label presents. So what I would need a way to locate that element. In our case, we can use just the class name. And I would need to make sure that the phrase is exactly the same as it is. So what I do, I can start with a simple method, which can simplify writing tests a bit later. Simple hook. I'm going to explain why that's so a bit later. And then just using standard Jasmine syntax. It's the same as for a unit test mostly. You can just check, for example, that home page and login page tests. So let's check that, for example, that label presents. So what I do, I ask Protractor to get a home page for me. And then what I do, I write just a simple expect module, which can, by the way, use just a standard jQuery, a bit jQuery syntax, for example, like that, to locate the title, and then I ask it to get text for me. And let's check if it's that one. And what I can do, I can just save the file, and it should run in our case. And there we go. The test passed. Everything is fine. What happens if the test is not correct? Let's try to remove some part of the phrase and run it again. All right, I have a debug module. In just a second, I will switch it off. It will speed up the testing a little bit. Well, somehow, sometimes it doesn't work. Yes, that happens. Yep, and now it runs. And what we get, that it's not correct. So the error messages are quite good. You can check in what exactly part doesn't work, and you can check what exactly is not correct. The second test would be a bit more complex. We will check if it works automatically well. In that case, for example, we can get a login page. And what we need to do, we can, again, we can just open an inspector in Chrome, and we can check which fields to fill. And here we can use special protective properties, like, for example, get by model. So what we can do, we can write element by model, type user email, and we can send keys to it. For example, and the same for password. You can just put that one. And let's try if it still works. We can run it without expect module just to make sure that it still works. And it doesn't. Why? Let's check it out.
You send the keys to the model now instead of the input box.
But it should work that way as well. Well, right. We can try to use just CSS.
Use the ID.
Where the ID?
The ID. My ID element.
Yeah.
ID.
So we can use CSS and check once again. I feel like it's not getting to the login page. Let's try it that way. Yep, now it works fine. Let's try to change it by model again. Okay, it's not here, but all right, works fine. What else we need to do? We need to push the button submit. So then we need to create it. Again, in that case, I can use just the CSS. But what we know here is that the button has a type of submit, and we can use that one to locate it. Okay, yeah, I've seen it. And what we do, we ask to click it. And I can also just write a simple expect module. Let's go and see what happens if we log in. And here what I can also do, I can go, for example, to our code, and I can locate, for example, some part of it. For example, here what we do, we insert user's email using Angular binding, and you can also use it in tests. Again, we are getting text, and we expect it to match, for example, oops, I just clicked it. For example, we don't even need to match the whole price, we can use that one only. And again, we run it. And yes, it's passed. Great. And the last test I'm going to do is just to do logout as well. Again, I need to find an element. In our case, it's logout button. We have quite a nice ID here, so I can just use the ID. Not sure, I guess I can even use just ID like that. Let's try if it works. And I click it. And the next one would be my expectation that it actually logged out. How can we check it? Well, we can see that that button gets visible in that case. That's the login link. Yeah, thanks. And what can we do? We can write. Wait a second. I guess it should be. Yes. We can check if it's displayed. We can check if it's true. Let's check it out, right? Yes, no one buys you. And it's passed. Great, yes. Alright, so the next question is how can you make your life a little bit more simple with that one? So what you can do, for example, some elements which are frequently used, like email field, you can just make an object for it, for example, login page object. And what you can do, you can pass email or password as well. Why? Because protractor relocates elements not when it gets the object, but when it's going to code. So if I just put here login page, page email, and page password, it should work fine as well. Let's check it out. Yes, it works that way as well. How else you can make your life a little bit simple? Well, again, sometimes it takes quite a lot of time to test, for example, 50 tests. Here I have only 3 tests, and it already takes about 7 seconds, if I'm correct. Yeah, it takes 6 seconds to test them. If you have 50 tests, it can take up to 10 minutes. And if you debug it, well, it's going to be quite a long run. What you can do, you can, for example, if you want to test just a single test, you can write double IT. In that case, it would run only 1 test. And as you see, it skipped the first test and the last one. You can also do the same with the describe block. In that case, it would test only 1 describe block, not all of them. And you can also test some failing tests. For example, you can put X in front of describe block or X in front of each block. Also, you can you can use debugger. So what you can do, you can write a browser debugger, and in that case, you also need to put a debug option in your grunt file if you run it with a grunt, or just pass it in your terminal. And what we will get is the browser should stop here. Let's check it out. Yes, first it stops here somehow. I don't know why. And then, as you can see, it stops here. So what we can do? Wait a second, I guess I forgot the right phrase. Just a second, I'm going to check some protractor documentation. So you can type a repo, and in that case, you can basically inject some of the comments here. For example, we can push that button. It doesn't work somehow. I guess it failed in that case. Let's try it once again. Yes, and now it works. And what you can do, you can again write a debugger, and then it will execute that command and stop again. Okay. Like that. And then it stopped again. So you can basically debug step by step if you're not sure if it's running well or not. Well, in our case, it just failed because that button was already pushed by me. What you can also do, you can make a pause. That's a better feature. It's marked in the documentation, but for me it works. So I'm going to switch off debug, and you don't need a debug to do that one. Let's run only the test to speed up it a little bit. And what it does, it just made a pause here. So again, when you check it out, you can even inspect some elements or type some commands in console line. When you're finished, you can just continue to the next command or to the next debugger statement. In our case, you can just push D, and it's going to finish all the tests. What else you can do? Well, that's quite a nice module, which is called, as you can see, which is called Element Explorer. It's a beta. For me, somehow it doesn't work so well, but I can show you it's in general, and I hope for you it would work quite well. So what I do, I run it with our front-end address in it, and in console line here, you can, for example, press tab and get a list of what I can do, and it also types for me element by. So, for example, I can again get that log button. And again, if I just press enter, it will show me what I can do with that one. And for example, I can try to click it, and for me it usually doesn't work. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it working, but I guess you will succeed in it. Anyway, it's a better feature. It doesn't. So I guess that's why it's still better. I thought it might be interesting to know. And so that was an example of backend tests with using real backend. We started with them first, and it was quite easy to write, quite easy to set up, and we needed no mocks for it. But what we faced is that backend transfer can differ each time, especially in our case if you use tree planner. So the dependency rows can sometimes change and the trends change and so on. And the real requests take quite a lot of time, so the tests were taking 10 minutes for us, maybe even longer. So what we did, we made a backend setup, which is eventually became quite fast, and we always get the same result. But in the same time, we need another file to keep track on, and well, it's harder to set up. We spent about 1 week setting it up. I can show you the difference in speed. So what I can do, I can go to the GUI mode, and I need to run my server once again.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
How do you keep the data of the real services and the mock data in sync? I can imagine the real service respond differently every time.
Yes, that's the issue. In that case, backend should also be tested to make sure that nothing changes in it and so on.
Okay. But do you keep data in sync somehow in the test, or are they like two separated?
Right now, we use a separate file with API mocks, which only has some API calls, which we know are the same all the time.
Okay.
Or if it's not the same, if it's not the same, what we know is that, well, at least the answer should be something like that. For example, if we get a trip, each time, well, if it's different, for example, day, if it's different day of the week, the answer could be different. And it's quite hard to test when you have different answers all the time. That's why we might have run mocked backend as well. So somehow it just got frozen here. This is what always happens when you do a live presentation. Let's try to run it. Oh yeah, it still doesn't work. Yes, I need to get a process ID somehow. Oh wait a second, no circuits. Alright, I'm gonna do it. Does anyone know the command to look at which process uses that port?
ls non-OF,
ls
ls OF,
or
min I, double print, and the port.
Colon. That's one.
Sorry. And you have the process in PID.
Oh, we have quite a lot of them. That one?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Oh, I have quite an eye. Quite a smart auditor. Yeah. Actually, first time it happened to me. And as usual happens on the presentation.
That's what you'll say.
And what we also
Kill it with min9.
yeah, it just uses a different.
Selenium is not running.
No, it's just the Java project. So we can use a simple way to kill it. What we do, we usually run Selenium as well with a grunt task, not with just the usual way, not with a WebDriver manager. So again, back to the presentation. So the setup wallet usually is already uses new design. Yeah, but what you can see is the tests go much faster because we don't wait for a backend transfer each time. So in that case, it took us only 1 second to run about 10 tests. Well, 21 tests actually, which is even better. And again, how to start backend OS? Well, it's not. It's only 3 steps in theory, but what you need to do, you need to include Angular mock, and then you need to build quite a build API file. That one with lots of API calls. How it can look? You can have, for example, a request itself, and you can have a response for it. And what we also made is we built a function which checks how it works first. So basically, go about mock module. It changes HTTP function in that way, so it will send all the requests to HTTP backend. And in that case, when the request is sent, we have a function here which checks if the request is correct, and then it just responds with the data we have in the API. So again, for example, checks if that one is correct, and then sends that response. And that's basically it about setting up backend way. And the next thing which I'm going to show you is a browser stack. And what is browser stack? It's a service with which one you can test on different systems, on different browsers, in different environments, your application. It runs quite well with Protractor. And as you can see, you can test it on Windows. Even Internet Explorer 6 is here, is present. I won't suggest you to support it, but anyway. You can also use macOS. Different versions again, and a lot of browsers. And you can even check iOS. And they also have Google Android, but Google Android doesn't work with Selenium. At least I was not able to make it work. Maybe someone here was. No one? No, okay, then I'm not the only one. And how does it work? Well, in case of browser stack, it asks for quite a good connection, internet connection. So I just made a small video at home to make sure that it will work fine, and I can show it to you today. So what I do, I just run my server as usual. And then in that case, in my case, I just type a command. I will explain what it starts exactly. So what it does, it starts a VPN, which connects browser stack and your local running machine. And also, browser stack runs just a standard, basically a task, Protractor task, except one thing. Let me show it to you. Except the Protractor config. So that time it points to browserstack.com, not the local host machine. And we also need to put all the capabilities which we want to use. For example, browser name, version, OS, even resolution, and some params like our user and our key. How can we find them? Well, browser stack has quite a good documentation on it. Should be Node.js testing. And it has some kind of constructor here, so we can choose basically what we want to use. And then we can just copy paste all you got here. And back to video. So what it does, it runs. It says here Chrome, but that's a bug, it's actually Firefox. And we can go to browser stack website and we can click on the automate. And what we get is we get a live feed here with our Firefox running on Windows machine. And it does all the same tests I did just a minute ago on my local machine. But as you can notice, it takes quite a long time. So the same amount of tests takes not 10 seconds, but about 40 seconds and even longer. It depends on the speed of your connection.
You can configure Protractor to get screenshots of different browsers. So you can take the UI, because the DOM could be the same in different browsers, but the way you display the UI could be different. You can do that with this.
Yes, you can also get screenshots, and what is even better, it makes for you screenshots on every step when your script is executed. Can show it a bit later. And for example, in the second case, what I did, I ran our test on iPad. In that case, browser stack runs iOS simulator for us, and we can pass exactly the same commands there. So as you can see, it's iPad. Oh, kind of iPad. And about screenshots part, if you just scroll here, on each step, browser stack makes screenshots. So later on, you can compare them. Or what else you can do? With Selenium, you can also take screenshots. So you can just write in somewhere in the test, like, take screenshot. I don't remember exactly what, but you can always check it in API docs. Simply put in screenshot. There we go. Take screenshot command.
What do you mean with stat? A single test. You say take screenshots every step.
Protractor takes them on every step, but also if you want to get screenshot of one particular moment, you can just do it in tests in here.
With a step. Huh? What do you mean with a step?
What I mean is that, for example, you have a test here, and let's say you want to get screenshot here.
What is it? What is one step? What's the default? Where does it take the screenshot?
It takes screenshot where you put it. Oh, you mean in a browser stack? Mm-hmm. Each time it executes a line of JavaScript. For example, it made a line here, it took screenshot. Line here, screenshot. Line here, screenshot. I would say you would spend quite a lot of time browsing through the screenshots.
Can you bundle them?
Huh?
Can you bundle them?
I'm not sure, I haven't tested it.
Is there a way to automatically compare them?
I guess not on browser stack, unfortunately.
Zijn tools voor.
Not sure about it.
There is a tool, but I'm not sure if it works with browser stack. But I know there is a tool which does like it's technically designed for CSS comparison, but it works on the same principle. Like it takes screenshots of your application throughout the process,
yes.
And then it can really compare them. Like it can compare the screenshots at the same points in time. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if it works with this one.
Yeah, I also found one service. I don't remember its name, but what they have an API with which one you can upload to pictures, and it will compare them and it will show you the differences between pictures. It will just show you on the picture itself, like with the box and so on. And to run browser stack, it's already be seen on the video. Well, in our case, I use browser stack tunnel command to run the VPN between me and browser stack. And then I just run tests using different config in Protractor. Everything else is the same. And the next, what I want to show is a trace. That's a continuous integration platform we should use. And why do we use it? Because each time when you do a pull request in GitHub, what Trace does for you, it checks if all the tests are run fine in all the browsers and so on. Because I can assume that you would not run all the end-to-end tests in every single browser every time you do something, because it would take about an hour. So we use Travis for that. How does it work? Well, it's quite simple. I just need to push at least one commit to repo. And then we can go to Trace. And what we can find is that we have some running jobs here. So I guess someone right now in the office runs backend test. And that's my running joke about. Well, I don't see. Oh, it should work even if I just made a commit to our repo.
Oh, you made a commit to the central repo?
Yes. To show it.
Sorry.
But also it's pull request. So what we can see, because browsers like usually takes and what they do, they take about 1 hour to test the whole application with all the unit tests. So I have one of the old failing tests, which I can show to you. So what it does, it basically just opens your application on Travis on a clean Linux machine, and it runs npm install command, installs all the packages you would need. Then it runs bower command, and again installs all the bower packages you would need. What it does next, it runs our test unit command and tests all the tests. And later on, it will also build an application for us to make sure that the build works fine. It will do unit tests on a build application once again, and then it will also run all the end-to-end tests using browser stack. So you can see it tested in our case on Safari, on Chrome, and on Internet Explorer it failed. Somehow.
So what?
Yeah, so yeah. And it will also test on all the other browsers if it wouldn't be found on Internet Explorer. So that's what the Travis does. And later on, if you made a pull request, you can see if the Travis failed or not. So it would save you some time, and you don't need to make sure by hand, to check by hand that everything works fine. I would say that was the end of my presentation.
Oh, yeah.
Questions?
About the backend stuff, I think the test that you showed us was using some HTTP requests, and you mentioned that you also do real-time stuff, so probably using WebSockets. And do you have any experience with testing with WebSockets-based backend?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Artem works on the front end, and the back end is the all real-time stuff is in the back end. So.
Yeah, well, what I meant was, if you use the HTTP service of Angular, then Protector by default understands that if you click a button and it activates a request, and it waits until the request is finished before it continues the test. And with WebSockets by default, it just continues. I'm just looking for experiences people have with that and how to deal with it and how to test it.
No, unfortunately, I don't know how to deal with it. Maybe anyone here knows? No?
It doesn't work well.
Any other questions? Oh, come on.
What about performance tests in your application?
Currently, we don't do a performance test on front-end application. I guess we do it in the back-end, but I'm not sure about it. Really?
We don't do stress tests, and we don't have hard limits on performance. We do have tests that will error when it's too slow, but that's more incidental than actually enforced. But obviously, performance is a big issue for us.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried using Protractor without Angular, just on a regular JavaScript application? And do you feel like it has any benefits to use Protractor instead of just regular WebDriver JS?
I haven't tried, but I have heard that people tried and it works fine. The only thing is that when you use it on AngularJS application, Protractor knows when to wait for it. So when to wait when the request is finished, is done. I guess when you use just the usual JavaScript application, it will not know when to continue. So it will just continue and the test will fail. Otherwise, you need to put a sleep command.
So there's a way to let protractor know to not wait for Angular. I don't know it from the top of my head, but I know there is a way. There's like a variable or a property somewhere you can set, and then it will not wait for it.
Okay, it's good to know.
Do you have any ideas or experience or stories you can tell about testing and the way it works together with dependency injection and the module system? What the typical module organization is when you want to include tests, or you want to test something and only include the relevant parts and not everything.
So what you want to say is that can we test only one test?
Yeah, I mean, we had some issues with structuring our application in terms of how we use the module system, and then how we actually, when we are going to test something, but we don't want to include everything in the test. So we only want to include a little bit of only the thing that we want to test.
Well, that's two ways to do it. First way, you can use adjustment syntax. For example, if you put I in front of it, or if you put D in front of describe, then it will test only that single block. Or
no. I'm referring to a general way of including your code in the test. So.
Oh yeah, you mean E2E tests?
Yeah, it's more unit testing.
Unit test is, I would say, it's complex testing for the whole application.
Yeah. So yeah, include everything in tests.
Yeah, I guess. Well, you can try to use unit tests, but it's not, I would say, visual test. In our case, it's just like a small function.
So do you have unit tests?
Yes, we have a unit test, but sure. It would be fun not to have them.
But in your unit test, you say like, well, I include the whole application.
What we do now, we are trying to include only some modules, but right now we do mostly, yes, we do include the whole application, and in that case, it mostly looks like integration tests, not a unit test, when you include the whole application. What we are trying to do, we are trying to get away from that one.
Yeah, because we are going to solve it by putting like a single controller or a single service inside a single module.
I know that Jorik works on that issue right now, but unfortunately he's ill today and he cannot tell you. That was a part of his part to about that one.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Can you say something about the approach and go about in testing? Is it test-driven, or do you look at what you're going to test afterwards? Do you have a lot of test coverage, or that part?
What we try to do TDD only, test-driven development. But in case of E2E tests, yes, sometimes we can write them a bit later. But anyways, the best approach is to write tests before, or well, if for some reason you're not able to write them, or you can, but you do it just right away after you wrote the function. Actually, that's a great article in the Year of More. Not sure if you, not that one, but the guy has another one. Actually, yes, it's that one. So what they do, they tell that. No, this is not that article, but that blog, at least. And what they do here is they, again, discuss the ability to write tests, and sometimes what they say is that it would be quite nice to write the test right away if you wrote the function. Otherwise, if you do the tests themselves before the actual code, you may end up writing only tests, not the code itself. But still, I'm trying to do TDD. Yeah.
I'm curious, in your test, Protractor knew when the login model was visible in order to start typing. It's because you're using enough that when the routing is done in order to. Because we have this problem now when we have things that people have to wait until it's visible. Because if it's not visible, you try to select or send keys, it doesn't work. in your test, how does it work? It's like the router knows that it's finished and...
So what protractor does, it has a wait for Angular method, and I already have some issues with that one here. But at least for us, it's waiting well.
It's close.
Yeah, it's close now. That's basically the function protractor. It runs itself. You don't need to run it by hand, and it should wait in your case.
Because one of our biggest challenges, we need to know when the view is ready to start testing it, and sometimes we have animation and things, so it's difficult to find out when it's ready in the DOM. So I was wondering if protractor does something that...
I know about that method, and for me it works well. Oh, by the way, if you use animation, you can use on protractor has some kind of prepare block, and what you can do, you can turn off animation with that block. I don't remember. Yeah, that's a function you can use, and what it does, it disables all the animations so the tests go much faster.
Oh, that's
It actually can also help in your case.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw something earlier about Cucumber. Are you actually using it for developing or setting up scenarios for your test cases?
No, we don't use Cucumber, but I worked with it a little bit while I was making Ruby on Rails applications.
Okay. But do you think it's added value, considering Jasmine is also kind of like a behavior-driven development toolkit? Do you think Cucumber can be used with Jasmine, or do you think actually Jasmine just does what Cucumber does, so it's not needed?
I think in our case it's not needed. What the Cucumber does, basically, if I remember it correctly, you can just write the stories like using, I would say, usual text, right? Yeah. Well, in our case, we use our to-be-done engine based on Pivotal Tracker, and we put stories there, and well, we don't test the stories using Cucumber. Just use C2E and unit testing.
Do you have a method to map the business requirements with your tests, or how do you do that?
Good question.
Or you don't, it's also possible.
I would say we use our own brain to make sure that it fits. And then we write an end-to-end test to make sure that it works and it will be working later.
Okay.
Now we have the same issue with we have fewer people writing stories only.
Yeah.
And it would be good to know if you can
connect
everything.
Yeah.
I would say it would be a bit overlay if you would also do Cucumber tests, because E2E tests is almost the same, but you write code, not the phrases. Any other questions? No. Okay, great.
Thank you.
I would say let's just